Hello, I'm the Irish guy, and right, today I'm going to take a look at every Premier League club and find the last manager who rejected each team. I mean, just imagine if these managers had said yes. I'm going to grade each one based on how well I think they would have done if they had actually taken the job. Right, let's go. Arsenal, Max Allegri, D. Lads, out of every football club in this list, Arsenal are the team which has been rejected by managers the least in my lifetime because they've barely approached anyone over the last 20 years. It's a bit like that comic book nerd who has never actually been turned down by a human woman because they haven't spoken to one other than their mum. Look, I'm not calling Arsenal a socially awkward bookworm. No, they've largely been in comfortable long-term relationships with Arsene Wenger and now Mikel Arteta. And unlike some loyalty-free clubs, they never actually sounded out managers behind their back. They weren't meeting with the likes of Marco Silva in a swanky coffee shop, offering to buy him a slice of chocolate meatloaf if he agrees to come on board. Yes, Jim Ratcliffe, I'm looking at you. No, the last time Arsenal were turned down was 5 years ago. Max Allegri's already admitted he rejected a Gunners approach after they'd fired Unai Emery. Anyone thinks he regrets that? Yes! Allegri was a serial winner in Serie A with AC Milan and Juventus. He'd collected 6 league titles up until that point, but over the last 5 years, he has just won Coppa Italia to show for it. He went back to Juventus in 2021, but it was not a particularly happy reunion. They finished 4th, 7th, 3rd. There were points deductions, the Paul Pogba mess, and he was sacked on the ugliest note. Binned off just 2 days after the cup final, after he was sent off for ranting at the match officials and waving away his own sporting director during the celebration. What a meltdown! I mean, Arsenal fans would have probably bitten off their own grandma's nose to bring this serial champion to North London 5 years ago, but I think it's clear that this version of Allegri would have been a complete disaster. I mean, the Arsenal board even thought this man was arrogant during his job interview. Yeah, considering he can barely speak English either. This would have just been like when a Serie A legend like Fabio Capello took the England job and then created an atmosphere about as tense as a candlelight dinner with a convicted cannibal. Yeah, you're scared to reach for the mashed potato in case he bites off your thumb. Yeah, this was a lucky escape for Arsenal because his time in football since this rejection has been ugly. Honestly, I was one of the most coveted managers in European football 5 years ago. Somebody headhunted by Real Madrid. Nowadays, his next job is probably going to be Wolves. All he'd have done at Arsenal is just Europa League football every year. Just another Emery. Aston Villa, Peter Botti. Yeah, when Aston Villa sacked Steven Gerrard last year, it wasn't an instant transition into Unai Emery. Oh no, the board apparently wanted to give the job to 60-year-old Dutch manager, Peter Bos. The man himself has admitted he said no, because he wasn't sure his style of football would translate into the Premier League with Villa. Yeah, this is the guy who took Ajax to that Europa League final in 2017. I know he just led PSV to the Eredivisie title. So he is clearly a decent coach on paper, but I sort of lost my trust in modern day PSV Eindhoven managers. I mean, the likes of Philip Cocu, Mark van Bommel, Ruud van Nistelrooy, all massive names in football who were good PSV managers. Yeah, Cocu has since failed at Derby County and was most recently seen begging for a job at Hibernian. Van Bommel crumbled in just 3 measly games at Wolfsburg and now manages Royal Antwerp, while Van Nistelrooy is interviewing for the Burnley job as we speak. Sorry, but Boss is not a patch on Emery and would have squeaked Villa into 10th maybe? So if Villa had hired him, it would be a D. Bournemouth, Rafa Benitez, C-. Yeah, I know Bournemouth were in talks with Marcelo Bielsa, but that just broke down over wage demands. No, the last manager that actually rejected Bournemouth straight out was apparently Rafa Benitez in February 2021. Yes, this former Real Madrid manager just quit Chinese football, probably due to the fact that his wife was bored of trying to communicate with the neighbors, using nothing but caveman grunts. Honestly, does anybody believe the Benitez family spoke Chinese? Back then, Bournemouth had just binned off Jason Tindall as the manager, whilst languishing halfway down the championship. So for 1 month, Bournemouth went Hollywood, targeting huge names like Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, and Rafa Benitez. But yeah, trying to get Rafa was sort of cute. They had seen a blockbuster name like Benitez agreeing to slum it in the championship with Newcastle before, so why not do it by the beach? Nah, Benitez had already completed the championship quest before. He did not want to step foot back in that division. To be fair, I bet Benitez actually regrets saying no, because it's 3 years later and his stock is absolute mud. After lasting just 22 games as Everton boss, and then just 33 games as Celta Vigo manager, those quick-fire sackings have ruined his career. Nowadays, he'd probably take a Premier League job for free. He'd probably agree to his own son in a pie to make that happen. Listen, he would still have been good for the Cherries and would have taken them up, but nah, Iriola is the future. So for Bournemouth, the Benitez era by comparison would just be a C-. Brentford, Rui Faria, F. Okay, Brentford haven't needed a new manager for quite some time. So for this one, I'm not really sure who was the last one to say no. I think it might have been Jose Mourinho's former assistant Rui Faria in 2018. Yeah, he since turned out to be a horrible manager at Al Duhail. Yeah, he'd have burnt the beast to the floor. Brighton, Kieran McKenna, B. Yeah, we all know that Brighton's first choice manager to replace Roberto De Zerbi was not the 31-year-old hipster love child from St. Pauli. Somebody right now is probably camped on some German mayor's porch throwing cow blood at his front door because he dared to chew a steak on TV. No, Brighton didn't actually want to go that hipster initially. They wanted Ipswich Town's manager Kieran McKenna. Again, another coach in his 30s, but after back-to-back promotions and the fact that he's a Jose Mourinho disciple, I get it. And in May, Ipswich fans were paralysed with fear because a £6 million switch, it looked close. But no, McKenna showed loyalty, signed a contract extension at Ipswich, so Brighton have had to plump for somebody who probably has vegan shoelaces. I think McKenna would have been a far better choice than this novice, Fabian Hürzeler, somebody who was young enough to have played in the same Bayern Munich team as Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. I mean, come on. McKenna wouldn't have been anything special, no European football or anything, just another Graham Potter, which I think is what Brighton want. Yeah, he'd have been a B. Chelsea, Julian Nagelsmann, A. Look, Chelsea are such a chaotic nut house at the minute that I would not be shocked if Todd Bowley has about 14 different secret rejections in his phone. But the big one everybody knows about is Julian Nagelsmann turning down the Chelsea job in April 2023. Just weeks after his nonsensical Bayern Munich sack, Chelsea were hunting for a Potter replacement and so settled on this German whiz-kid wonder coach. This guy is everything that Brighton are praying Hürzeler is gonna be, but he's great. I have no idea why Bayern got rid when he had a 71% win record and lifted a Bundesliga title in his only full season in the job. I don't think Bayern know where they've been them off either, because they were recently crying down the phone to him, begging him to come back 2 months ago, like someone who regrets breaking up with their wife when he realizes that hugging his teddy bear and eating a scrambled egg in his pants has lost the appeal. Look, I think Nagelsmann is about to become a German legend. He is going to win Euro 2024 and cement himself as the best young coach in the world. This guy is a future Real Madrid boss, and at Chelsea, I think he'd have been superb. He'd have probably had a similar debut season as Pochettino, but if he was given time, he would have got this talented young squad back into the Champions League. He'd have been an A. But no, you instead had to settle for Pep's former pet, somebody who he probably used to feed doggy treats in his lap. Crystal Palace, Julian Lopetegui, C-. Crystal Palace are probably confused by this one. Apparently in February, before they replaced Roy Hodgson with Oliver Glasner, Steve Parish had sounded out Julian Lopetegui, who was still unemployed after walking out on Wolves last year. But things got messy. The Spanish boss was already locked in talks with AC Milan. Yes, 7-time Champions League winners, AC Milan. To suddenly then receive a friend request from Lodi Crystal Palace. No. It'd be like being out to dinner with the King of Norway, and you've got someone like Fogden pressing his nose up against the window, begging if he can have a slice of your pie. No thanks. To be fair, Lopetegui didn't actually get the AC Milan job after the fan protests. I mean, I say protests, but I mean, creating the hashtag Lopetegui on Twitter isn't exactly the same as turning human skulls through the Milan president's bedroom window. It was all very half-hearted. Look, I think Lopetegui at Palace would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been the swashbuckling, sizzling football that Glasner has produced. I mean, Lopetegui was given disgustingly filthy, talented attacking players at Real Madrid like Bale, Ronaldo, Benzema, Vinicius Jr. in 2018. And he produced 4 defeats from 5 games, where Real scored twice and conceded 11. If he couldn't get those world-class superstars to click, what hope would he have had with Olise and Eze? Yeah, compared to free-flowing Glasner ball, Lopetegui would have been a boring C-. Everton, Marcelo Bielsa, F. Look, Everton seemed to make it an annual habit out of experiencing embarrassing managerial rejections in January. In 2022, Wayne Rooney was saying no to a job interview. Yeah, the same plump chicken who now manages Plymouth. But in January 2023, Marcelo Bielsa was withdrawing from the Everton managerial race after saying he was only prepared to move to Goodison Park if he was able to initially coach the under 21s. Yeah. It all sounds very Barcelona. Everton were in the middle of a relegation dogfight, and here they had a former Argentina manager, one of the most brilliant brains in football, telling them that he just wanted to coach the kids. Strange. There was a long-term strategy though. Bielsa wanted to implement his complicated football ideology at grassroots level with the children first, completely remodeling the youth structure before then taking the senior Everton job. I mean, to be fair, for that to happen, Everton would have had to find someone who would agree to take a 6-month interim job. I mean, Sean Dyche wouldn't have taken that lowly, pathetic short-term offer. It would have instead gone to some desperate flea bag like Sam Allardyce, and the Toffees would have gone down. Then the financial punishments would have hit them, burying them with the championship, and Bielsa would have given up and quit. I mean, this is somebody who walked away from Lazio after just 2 days. He is somebody who will happily break a commitment and leave a job for nothing. Like if he finds a spider in his cheese panini at the canteen. The whole experiment would have been a mess. Lucky escape. Fulham, Arsene Wenger F. Fulham have not actually experienced rejection in a while. The last manager who actually said no was Arsene Wenger in November 2018 and then again in May 2019. This is a great football genius who turned down Real Madrid twice. Now he was having to repeatedly put down the phone on Fulham. How cheeky were this club to try and convince Wenger to take a job in the championship? It would be like asking the king if he wants to come around yours and eat chocolate biscuits out of the neighbour's bin. Fulham got Scott Parker instead, and Fulham eventually went up under him. With Wenger, I don't actually think it would have worked. At least Parker was young, hungry, and with a point to prove. Wenger was a weary old man in his 70s who was trying to get the offside rule scrapped. He'd have been sacked after 5 months with Fulham 15th in the championship. It would have been very sad. Just let the man rest. Ipswich Town, Frank Lampard B. Look, I know that Frank Lampard is seen as a walking joke. Even Gary Lineker is slagging him off on the telly for going bald. But this man is not another Rooney and shouldn't be lumped in there. As far as young English managers go, Lampard isn't terrible. He did a quality job at Chelsea, getting them back into the Champions League, something which has been beyond them now for a while. And he was also 1 game away from taking Derby County into the Premier League. This man has something. Anyway, he apparently snubbed Ipswich Town in 2018 as they had no budget. That could have been his first job. Look, that whole club were a complete mess, and they would have been relegated under him anyway. But if Lampard had stayed loyal to them in League One, I think he'd have got them back up. I mean, he wouldn't have produced a McKenna miracle and taken him to the Prem or anything, but I think he'd be quietly seen as a success. Leicester City, Graham Potter D+. Yeah, Leicester City have just been rejected by Graham Potter this week. I don't know who that man thinks he is. Does he not want to work again? Ever since being fired by Chelsea, this man has been inundated with interest. He has turned down big teams like Nice, Ajax, Lyon, Brighton, and now Leicester City, a club who won the Premier League less than 10 years ago. Clearly that man is dreaming about becoming the next England manager, right? Because choosing to turn down a club with a recent history of Leicester City, it's insane. And he is going to regret this. Anyway, yeah, Potter at Leicester would be fine. He'd have probably kept them up, but nah. They've got Steve Cooper instead. Somebody who looks like if he drew a face on a potato. And he'd probably do a similar job to what Potter would have done. Meh. Liverpool, Xabi Alonso A+. Wow. This is arguably the most heartbreaking rejection in the list. Xabi Alonso would have been the perfect Liverpool fit after an invincible Bundesliga winning season with Bayer Leverkusen to then slip into Jurgen Klopp's shoes at a club where he's already won the Champions League as a player and he's seen as an absolute hero already. Alonso was the perfect fit for Liverpool. Just like how Mikel Arteta was destined to replace Arsene Wenger, it's just no one really knew that he was any good. But with Alonso, we have proof that he is a legitimate, arguably world-class manager. At Liverpool, he would have won them the Premier League title in his second season. Is Arne Schlock going to do that? No, he's going to have the Liverpool legacy of a Brendan Rodgers. One outside title challenge if he's lucky. Honestly, Alonso was the guy. Liverpool fans must be devastated. Man City, Jurgen Klopp A+. It has been more than a decade since Manchester City were rejected by any manager, but apparently it was Jurgen Klopp. Back in 2013, the Borussia Dortmund manager met with City Chiefs and ultimately said no, showing loyalty to a Dortmund team who he just squeaked into a Champions League final. Look, I think it's all worked out perfectly for City, but what if he had gone? Right now, he would be seen as the enemy of the Premier League. Liverpool fans would utterly hate him for dominating English football. Look, I'm not saying he's a better manager than Pep. No, but think about it. If Klopp had been at Man City for 10 years, then obviously there would be no Klopp revolution at Liverpool. And I don't think Pep was ever going to agree to rock up at Anfield when they had Benteke up front. So I reckon this man would have won 7 Premier League titles unchallenged on the trot and the Champions League at least once. It would have been an A+ job. Man United, Thomas Tuchel D. Yeah, apparently Manchester United only stuck with Erik ten Hag this summer because Thomas Tuchel knocked them back this month. You know, I reckon it's a lucky escape. I think Tuchel's career is going to be affected forever by this really argumentative, troublesome, toxic spell at Bayern Munich. And don't forget, he did have a falling out with the board of PSG too, and it's never come out, but something must have happened between him and the Chelsea Chiefs. I don't think Tuchel would have gelled with his Manchester United squad. Come on, there's a group of players who couldn't stand being shouted at by the big bad wolf that was Jose Mourinho. So Tuchel, this would be more of the same. He'd have had the same fate as Ten Hag. More of the same. Nothing would have changed. Meh. Newcastle, Unai Emery B. Eddie Howe was not Newcastle United's first choice replacement for Steve Bruce. The owners actually approached Villarreal for their serial winner Unai Emery, and he said no. Look, he is a better manager than Howe, yeah. But I don't know. Both Howe and Emery have both finished 4th in the Premier League since then. They've almost done identical jobs to each other at Newcastle and Aston Villa. I'm sure Emery would have been a success at St James's Park too, and would have got the Magpies back into the top 4 probably. But I don't know, considering how well Howe is done, this is a bit like choosing between Potter and Cooper at Leicester. It's not a huge upgrade either way. Much of a muchness. Yeah, I think Emery would have done a very similar job. B. Nottingham Forest, Mauricio Sarri. A. Apparently Nottingham Forest were rejected by Mauricio Sarri in March. Clearly the Forest board were unimpressed by Nuno Santos' boring, slow-paced, plodding football, because this is only 3 months after they gave the Portuguese man the job. Trust me lads, Santos getting the boot very early doors next season, because clearly the Forest board are not impressed. Anyway, Sarri had just resigned at Lazio just days before this approach, and let's be real, he'd have been great. Sarri would have made Forest an exciting, ambitious, counter-attacking side who would probably crawl their way into the top half next season. I think he'd have been a huge success. Southampton, Jesse Marsh. E. It seemed weird when Jesse Marsh was hours away from becoming Southampton manager. 1 week after being sacked by Leeds, he was going to be taking part in the same relegation battle, spread across 2 different clubs. It would have been weird, and it wouldn't have worked. Southampton were doomed. I reckon he'd have been sacked in the summer. I mean, he's since become the Canada boss, and he's going to be competing in the Copa America. I think he's relieved he said no, because being half responsible for the relegations of both Leeds and Southampton in the same season, you don't recover from that. Tottenham, Arne Slot. C. Yeah, you might think that Arne Slot was just some bald egg in Holland who would have snapped up any decent Premier League job that came his way. I mean, he was practically squealing with excitement in his final press conferences, telling the world that he was off to Liverpool. But no, he actually apparently turned down Spurs last summer. Would he have done a better job than Ange Postecoglou? I don't know. More of the same, really. West Ham, Ruben Amorim. B. Yeah, apparently Ruben Amorim rejected West Ham within hours of his meeting in London, probably pulling out due to sheer guilt because he's back groveling for forgiveness at Sporting Lisbon. Honestly, that must have been a very awkward title parade, knowing that he'd been caught out on Sky. Listen, Amorim is clearly a good manager, although he would have been a huge risk at a club like Liverpool. At 39 years of age, he seems like a more modern, progressive, ambitious appointment for West Ham than a 57-year-old Julian Lopetegui, who I think has already peaked. Yeah, Amorim would probably have done a better job than mid-table Lopetegui. It would have been like when he appointed a young, hungry coach like Slaven Bilic. Lopetegui, by contrast, stinks of moldy old Manuel Pellegrini. I think Amorim would have done a B-plus job by getting the Hammers back into Europe. Lopetegui won't. Wolves, Michael Beale. F. Look, I know Wolves don't exactly have a mini Mourinho in the job now, but still, they had a lucky escape with Michael Beale. Turned them down in 2022 to stay loyal to QPR. I mean, he wasn't that loyal. He was signing for Rangers within a month. Yeah, he failed there and has since been sacked by Sunderland after just 12 games in the job. His career is in absolute tatters at just 43 years of age. Oh, this guy, he'd have gotten Wolves relegated, wouldn't he? Anyway, that's the video. Let me know. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. How would these managers have done? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as always. I'll talk to you in a while.